Gabby Petito's remains were found. It was, I believe, another day or so. That was on the 19th that the news conference was held, that the remains were found, and they identified them as Gabby Petito, but we did not find out the manner of death until, I believe, a day or so later. So patience with the investigators at this point. And the big question is, does this close this case? Is this Brian Laundrie? And do we now have a closed case where we have a homicide, but no live defendant to prosecute?
And let's begin right there. That is the big question. The partial human remains discovered today at the Carlton Reserve here in Myakkahatchee. Is that Brian Laundrie? Is that Brian Laundrie? So many people, of course, have been on the lookout for Brian Laundrie. There have been sightings. Here comes the FBI. We're back here with you live on WFLA Now immediately after the press conference.
Live today.
Good afternoon, Josh Taylor with the Northport Police Department. Thank you for your continued diligence on this story, and thanks for your patience. As you know, the Northport Police Department has worked collaboratively with the FBI throughout this investigation. So Special Agent Michael McPherson is going to make a prepared statement. There's not going to be any questions today, but hopefully it answers some of them. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael McPherson. I'm the Special Agent in charge of the FBI Tampa Division. As you're aware, the FBI and the Northport Police Department and our state and local law enforcement partners have been searching the area of the Carlton Reserve for Brian Laundrie, a person of interest in the murder of Gabby Petito. Earlier today, investigators found what appears to be human remains, along with personal items such as a backpack and notebook belonging to Brian Laundrie. These items were found in an area that up until recently have been underwater. Our evidence response team is on scene using all available forensic resources to process the area. It's likely the team will be on scene for several days. I know you have a lot of questions, but we don't have all the answers yet. We are working diligently to get those answers for you. We are grateful for the dedication and professionalism of the Northport Police Department, along with our partners from the state and local agencies. Complex investigations such as this cannot be accomplished by one agency alone, but there's just too many agencies to name them all here today. Portions of the Myakkahatchee Creek Environment Park and Carlton Reserve will remain closed to the public until further notice. This is an active and ongoing investigation, so we ask the public to maintain distance from any law enforcement personnel, equipment, vehicles, and other related activity for the safety of the public and to protect the integrity of our work. We have no additional comment related to today's activities. Our FBI Denver office is the lead investigative agency, and all future inquiries should be directed to them. We appreciate the tremendous support from the public and continue to ask for your assistance in bringing this investigation to close. Thank you.
With the backpack found near the Justice for Gabby! 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 Justice for Gabby!
Breaking news on WFLA Now. Here is JB Buno.
You hear the calls. Justice for Gabby. After the FBI announces information that we have been receiving over the last several hours. Partial human remains discovered here today at the Carlton Reserve near a backpack and a notebook. A backpack and a notebook that might belong to Brian Laundrie, a scene that is now going to take several days for them to comb through, an evidence response team with the FBI and other law enforcement agencies here at the scene in Florida. Hey folks, JB Buno here with you live on WFLA Now. Let's show you that area here again. You saw that there were folks there on lawn chairs. Yes, lawn chairs that have, the folks that have been outside of the Carlton Reserve or really outside of Myakkahatchee, while just goes to show how many people have been following this story around the world and wanting updates. And we were talking about it right before the press conference began. The answer that we wanted as far as the question that was hopefully going to be asked, and we didn't get an opportunity here to ask any questions, was, is this Brian Laundrie? We did not learn that here today.
We did not, and I would like to hear the sound again. Did he say might? He worded it, it seemed, I would say oddly, did he say might have belonged to Brian Laundrie? Or did he say, he might have gone a step farther than that it was, but he did say notebook, he did say backpack. Look, the notebook, by the way, if it's Brian Laundrie's, is fascinating, right? Because what could we learn from that notebook? What will be released from that notebook by the FBI? But he also pointed out, and we've said this, you and I have both said this, we've all said this, very complicated investigation involving multiple jurisdictions and multiple agencies that are trying to coordinate and figure out these answers. He also was somewhat apologetic to the public.
Hold on a second. I have another feed here. I want to hit the touch screen and bring up just a couple different feeds here. There, just to show everybody here and take a look here. Yet another shot that we have here now going across the front area of the Carlton Reserve. You can see that there are some folks that have gathered here and they're speaking to police. Just listen in here for a second, if we can. There isn't much audio in this feed. I just punched it up. So again, just showing people have been coming from across the country to be here, Walt, to be part of the Justice for Gabby movement. You can see the lawn chairs and folks that have brought their own belongings here to camp out here today. You can't go into the reserve, but there's nothing that says that you can't be outside of it. And you can see that a lot of folks here are showing pictures and sounds like they are shouting at police. Let's see if we can listen. There's no audio on this feed.
I saw our photographer from Channel 8 take the mic, so there might not be a mic at all.
And it might be audio that, again, we don't know what kind of language is being used here, but right. You can see that they're not shouting at police as much as they are shouting at photographers.
It looked like though the news conference ended with them chanting "Justice for Gabby" to the investigators. Kind of odd, I think. I get the frustration, but you're chanting to the investigators who are trying to figure out what they have, and the worst thing they could possibly do is say it's Brian Laundrie without certainty and then find out it's not. That would be worse than us doing that.
I want to clarify, I believe that we can have it now that they did say that the backpack and other items, the backpack and the notebook are items that belong to Brian Laundrie. And this is now consistent now with Stephen Bertolino's comments earlier on today that Chris and Roberta Laundrie were there at the reserve this morning. That's Brian Laundrie's parents participating in the search with the Carlton Reserve being open, with Myakkahatchee being open. Anyone can go. And Chris and Roberta Laundrie went to an area, as we understand it, that Brian Laundrie was known to have been in the past. They go to this area, and with the water receding, Mother Nature, with the water receding, it exposes something that wasn't, or at least was in an area that was previously underwater, exposes something that law enforcement or searchers had previously not seen there before.
Yeah, and he did not say whether they had searched there before.
And he said that they found articles, and now we know more details what those articles are.
And it would be interesting to know if they had searched that area before. We don't know that. It is at the entrance to the Myakkahatchee.
Yeah,
to practice that word at the entrance there. But photographer Jim Hockett, who's been up in Eagle 8, although he's coming down now because there's a restriction now, he said the tent is in the reserve north of Myakkahatchee. So it must be where the two pieces of property are sort of join each other. Myakkahatchee is 160 acres. The reserve is 25,000. So it's right there where those two areas meet. And that white tent, according to Jim Hockett, investigative photographer Jim Hockett, is the white tent is in the reserve right near Myakkahatchee River area.
I'm going to see if we can get an update on where Eagle 8 HD is. Or no, I'm sorry, wait, I'm just now remembering. Okay, so right. Eagle 8 HD, yes, it's just occurring to me again. I always want to hit that button here as far as going to our news chopper. Temporary flight restriction. The FAA has put it up, and we can't fly over Myakkahatchee right now. So news choppers. And I would imagine that TFR is going to be up for days, because if this is going to take days to comb through this scene, and forensics and the medical examiner's office and everyone going through this scene here to be textbook as far as their approach to handling what they have discovered at the Carlton Reserve, it is going to be it's going to be behind not closed doors, but you know what I mean. It's not going to be in view of the public because of the temporary flight restriction, and we can't get any cameras in there. The park itself is closed. I want to show you another live feed that we have up. Always tapping into as many live feeds as we can here. And yes, this folks know this front door quite well. This is the home in Northport, the home of Chris and Roberta Laundrie, Brian Laundrie's parents. They were at the reserve this morning. They are no longer there. As we understand it, we have been informed that they are home. And Walt, they are parents who, based on what we have learned at this stage, might have lost a child.
Yes.
We do not know whether or not those remains. Michael McPherson, the FBI agent who briefed the media, did not answer whether or not those remains are in fact Brian Laundrie's remains. They'll have to, of course, go by the book and go through the process that they have. But inside this home right now are two parents who have, just like Joe Petito and just like Nicole Schmidt, might have lost, well, they lost a child. Gabby's, Petito's parents lost a child, but we could be dealing with another set of parents here in tremendous grief from potentially losing their child. A 23-year-old man, a 22-year-old woman that were engaged to be married. That is Justin Shecker there in front of the home. Justin Shecker, known to our WFLA Now audience as well. And there is so much difference between, I want to make this very clear, there is so much difference between what the Petito and Schmidt families experienced and what the Laundrie family experienced. They went through completely different experiences, but if this is Brian Laundrie, they are two parents now, and for Gabby's family, it's a 4 co-parenting unit with Tara and Jim in mind. It's two families now that are going through tremendous loss and are heartbroken over what has transpired over the last couple of months. You have to remember, July 2nd, Walt, they're embarking on a cross-country road trip. They're leaving together, seemingly in love, going across the country, experiencing the world. And here we are now, it's October 20th, and we find these partial human remains. And it's a story of tragedy. No matter how we got to this destination, the destination and the conclusion here, this is a tragic story, and one that we don't know. We're going to ask this to our audience. Are we any closer to finding out if there's going to be justice for Gabby Petito? I'd be very curious what our audience has to say about that.
You know, somebody on Twitter contacted me, just pointed out the notebook, if it is there and if it's Brian's, well, we know it's Brian's. If there are writings in there, will it be soaking wet and unreadable? If it's not soaking wet and it is readable, this is a guy who there had been various media reports had some really dark writings, and his music on Spotify, sort of dark leanings. He was reading this book that was a little dark, and you just wonder if what he expressed in that notebook, and you know, what condition is the notebook in. Keep this in mind. The FBI has every type of expert you can imagine. I covered a trial where we heard from a duct tape expert who could determine that one piece of duct tape came from a roll that was found in the back of a suspect's trunk. So they have ways, I'm sure, to examine paper that we can't imagine. We keep saying this isn't a TV show, but some of those things you see on TV, those things are real. So,
but some of those TV shows, like I'm just gonna throw this one out there, Forensic Files, like these are rooted in real cases and real tactics employed by law enforcement.
So I mean, that notebook becomes extremely important if there are writings about this case, because when people want justice for Gabby, I'd like to, what does that mean? Does that mean they want Brian Laundrie tried and to face a jury? Or I don't know what justice means in this case. I know what it means literally as an adjudication, which we may not get if this is Brian Laundrie. But what do they mean, justice for Gabby? Like, dive into that for me. What do we mean by that? Do we want Brian Laundrie prosecuted? Is that what it means? Or is it, do we want to know why? Why did he do it? when did he do it? How did he do it? Or what made him do it? What is his motive, if there is one? Does the notebook lend us to that? We'll find out, I guess.
Justice to me, and I'll just share.
So I just want to say this, okay? You see how they constantly say he did it? This guy, he's on here saying he did it, he did it, he did it, he did it. But then he contradicted himself, okay? He contradicts himself in a way where he comes out and he says, beforehand, I wonder what was in that book that Brian wrote, you know, what did it pertain to the case, you know? But then in the end, he did it, you know, and that's what I mean by pointing the finger. And they constantly, you know, you got these guys that come on, and the reason why they do it is because they get more hits and more clicks to their channel, because the more they spread fake news, the more people believe the fake news. But you see, I'm already in contact with people that are, I'm not gonna even mention, you know, the things I know. I'm just waiting for the feds to release. That's it. But later on, we will be coming out with a show, and you know, one of our team members, Jennifer, she located something that, you know, yeah, definitely puts it right towards where I said this was going and where I've been saying it's going. So let's get back to this.
Eluding this cause, or are we closer to justice? I'd like to hear your comments here on the Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and on Twitter in those comment sections, and we can feature your comments here on screen.
What does justice mean? I'd like more than just we want justice. I get that. That's simplified, but what does that mean? Does that mean when you say there's not going to be any justice, does that mean you wanted him prosecuted to the full extent of the law, or does it mean something else? When you say you want justice, do you mean we want fairness? I want to, you know, because I get what
right,
you might mean.
Because justice in the eyes of some is eye for an eye, and that's not necessarily how our system works here in the United States. Clearly, it's not an eye for an eye sort of system. If you go and you stab somebody, there isn't a judge in America that is going to say, or a judge anywhere for that matter, that's going to say, okay, now the other person gets to stab back. That's just not how it works. But what does justice? You're right. What does justice look like? And are we further from it? Is it closer? I think we're closer to answers, but are we closer to justice? We're gonna again open up, and it takes a few buttons here with as large of an audience as we have. It takes a few buttons here that I'm gonna press to feature your comments here on WFLA Now. For those of you who have been with us here before, you're gonna hear this for probably the second, third, or 40th or 50th time, but I have to repeat this over and over again to our audience as far as how this works. You see the hashtags on our screen. You see them here on the yellow stripes, hashtag KJB, on the right side of your screen, hashtag HeyWalt. And if you use those hashtags, that is a means for us to grab your comment from social media, and we can feature it here and animate it here on screen. If you do not want your picture and your profile picture, your name and your comment to be featured on screen, just don't use the hashtag, and we'll let your comment scroll idly on by up screen. But we're going to start now by taking your comments. While I look for some of these comments here, Walt, what do you think the response is going to be to what we have just learned from the FBI? I would imagine the first thing that people are going to say is, we want more information, we want to know more. But this has been a story that has tugged at the emotional, heartstrings of so many people. Where do you think the public is after this FBI press conference?
Well, they're not happy. There's no doubt they're not happy. But I hope, there's as many unreasonable comments as I've seen. There are also a lot of reasonable people who have some empathy, like we've talked about for the laundries, about the protests in front of it. And then there are others who say, no, protests, they did something wrong. We know they did. So I hope people understand that, there's an old saying in journalism, get it first, but before you get it first, get it right. And there's nothing more that would be more have a bigger negative impact than if the FBI sort of said, oh yeah, we think it's Brian Laundrie, or it's Brian Laundrie, and then it turns out to not be Brian Laundrie, and that just can't happen. So and he said it's a complicated case. That particular FBI agent is out of the Tampa office. This is a Denver-led investigation. So again, he does not want to speak for Denver, and I'm sure Denver wants to make sure they know exactly whose body this is, because and that means the search continues, right? The search continues, and that if again, I think tipsters should realize if you see Brian Laundrie, the tip should still come in, right? I mean, let's be logical here. We don't know that that's Brian Laundrie. We know it's a backpack. We know it's a notebook, but we don't know that's Brian Laundrie yet. And I think people will be frustrated, but they should understand the investigation takes its time because they want to make sure it's right and accurate.
Let's start with this one, and this would be a direct opportunity for us to get some information. But Melissa Mariuti, #HeyWalt, #HeyJB. Hopefully Brian left answers in that notebook in regards to all of our questions that we have.
No doubt. And
Does
if
that
it's
notebook
legible, if it can be read, if it was in the water, can you read it right away? But paper, again, the FBI has probably I don't think there's a probably about it. It's the best crime lab in the world.
Let's also talk about we don't know this is Brian Laundrie. We don't know this is Brian Laundrie. If this is Brian Laundrie, if we don't know the manner of death, people are commenting already, blowing up #HeyJB, #HeyWalt, saying and wondering aloud or theorizing aloud that this is suicide. Is the notebook potential for it's not a piece of paper, it's a notebook, but is that the potential for what in other cases would be called a suicide note? That's another thing that people are again, just chiming in with some of the things that people are saying here in the social media comment section. But this is very much some of the comments that we're getting in here. Let's get to some more questions and comments, and we asked you to define what youth justice is in this case. Tammy Lynn, #HeyJB, #HeyWalt. Justice is someone being held accountable for murdering Gabby and helping him get away. Let's not understate that or miss that they called it a murder. Michael McPherson called it a murder. It is otherwise been disclosed.
Did he say murder today?
No, I wrote it down. A person of interest, and he identified Brian Laundrie. I wrote it in my notes because I wanted to be certain. Michael McPherson, FBI, said that Brian Laundrie is a person of interest in Gabby Petito's murder. Now, while that might not seem like a big revelation to people joining us and saying like, JB, why are you making a big deal out of that? It's a big deal in that when it's acknowledged by the FBI that it's now not a homicide, a murder case, and that he's a person of interest in murder, which we haven't ever heard those words uttered before. He was a person of interest in an FBI-led criminal investigation into the disappearance of Gabby Petito, and of course that it would come out that the federal arrest warrant was issued for the credit card, the alleged credit card or debit card fraud. But to hear those words, Brian Laundrie, person of interest in Gabby Petito's murder, we can't overlook that. That was a moment in this press conference that didn't offer all that much, but that stuck out to me because it's the first time we haven't heard much from the FBI. And we haven't even heard Josh Taylor, the spokesperson for Northport Police, utter those words, but we had it here today from FBI agent Michael McPherson speaking to Mike Ahaji.
Could it be a slip of the tongue? Should he have said homicide? And keep in mind, here's what we're talking about. Yep. Murder. Now, again, a strangulation, I'm pretty sure strangulations have to almost always be first degree because intent does not seem to, I'm not an attorney, but intent does not seem to be a question in a strangulation because of the length of time. Does the FBI now consider this a murder and we don't know that? It's initially a homicide, which would include murder, second degree murder, criminally negligent homicide, manslaughter. This is with a strangulation, there's intent. So maybe they do now consider it a murder. I don't know, or a slip of the tongue, but very, very perceptive of you to pick that up, JB. Also, well, we have to be perceptive with the comment in front of us. Tammy saying, and helping him get away. Now, that is a comment. That is a comment that, as we see Cassie Laundrie come up here on screen, but that is a comment that is alleging, Tammy is alleging that
Brian Laundrie wasn't alone as far as leaving and as far as eluding authorities. Now, you just saw Chief Todd Garrison, who was there at the press conference as well. I don't know if you caught that, Walt, but Chief Todd Garrison, Chief of Northport Police, was there as well. He was the one who famously said, or infamously said, we know where Brian is, and he was there at that press conference today. But again, Tammy alleging here that Brian had help. Did Brian have help? Was Chris or Roberta Laundrie involved in him leaving the home? Was there somebody else that aided him? These are questions now that get tackled in the future, but I don't know if necessarily how much that is going to satisfy getting answers to that question. I don't know how much that satisfies those that have been crying out for justice for Gabby. I don't know what that would mean to Nicole or Joe Petito or Nicole Schmidt, Gabby's mom and dad. We don't know, but it's interesting there are so many out there that still today believe that Brian's disappearance didn't occur without help.
In a third-degree felony in Florida, the parent has immunity against being prosecuted for accessory after the fact. In a third-degree felony, if this is a murder, which it appears to be, it does not appear to be a manslaughter or a criminal, it doesn't appear to be an accident. You can't accidentally strangle someone. If they somehow believe or can prove that Brian did it, and that becomes difficult, you could get them for accessory. You can, first or second, you can get parents for accessory. Keep in mind, nobody's been charged. I do not believe there's no immunity in a federal case, though. So if this is a federal case, and obviously you'd have to be able to link the son to the crime, right? How do you do that if the son is no longer alive? So those things come into play. Now, obstructing justice or getting in the way or lying to police, I don't think it would have to have any tie to the real base crime here, which is the homicide. So I get what she's saying there. But again, let's really emphasize this. No one has been charged with anything except Brian Laundrie for the debit card fraud with Gabby Petito's cards.
Let me ask you this. If this is Brian Laundrie, and if Brian Laundrie is determined to be deceased, what happens to the Gabby Petito homicide murder investigation? What happens to is there ever a day where Brian Laundrie gets named as a suspect, even if he is deceased? How does the process evolve now that we have potentially Brian Laundrie deceased in addition to Gabby Petito?
I think that notebook's key. What's the notebook say? If the notebook somehow says I had to do it or whatever it says, that's a key. Can they read the notebook? You know, it's interesting. You said earlier in this broadcast how this story, and you're right, has had so many odd twists. The camping trip, the fact they bought the camper at that point, the Mustang,
the flight home,
that was a rumor that turned out to be true. The social media impact on it, that the last time she was seen alive was by a social influencer, a social media influencer out of New Orleans. And that the van was spotted by a.
And I'm also positive that the notebook is not written in the English language. I can guarantee you that whatever's inside of that notebook is drawn in cryptic messages, in biblical language, and whatever's in that notebook is going to lead the case to the ringleader of this. Which I already know who the ringleader is, but I'm not going to mention that. You know, like I said, I can't point my fingers, but I'm pretty sure that I'm pretty exact on who it is. But like I said, I'm not going to be out there like a lot of people pointing their fingers, because it's the wrong thing to do is point. But you see, if they would have read his artwork correctly, now I'm not saying the feds, but the media, if they would have read it correctly, But of course, they're not going to do that anyway, because all they feed into is lying and telling bullshit. You can't. This guy right here, JP, he doesn't lie about shit. And he corrects himself when he does say something in a mistakenly way. So this is real news. This is actually happening right now. So whatever you hear on Facebook is BS, straight up. But there are things pertaining to this that I know about that I'm not going to say yet. And I won't, because there's one thing you can talk about it and anybody can think about whatever they want to think about. But until you have evidence that he did that, then you ain't got nothing. And then on the other hand, as I've been saying to people, if you really think about this, now let's put it like this. Everybody disappeared from Facebook for about a week. None of the groups, nobody was speaking about anything. Okay, do you know why? Because when Brian, his lawyer, and the two lawyers came out in an article written by BBC News, which is not lies, because they don't bullshit. They don't have time to be on Facebook lying. Okay, they're real news. They're letting the world know the real news. The feds and the court ruled out Brian as a murder suspect, and people still don't understand what that means. When they rule somebody out and they say he's merely even a person of interest at this point, okay? What that means is that they've already apprehended a certain amount of suspects who are involved and are responsible for those murders. But you see, I don't have time to follow the case every day, but I do follow it. And I do my research. Let's put it like this. There's 5 bodies that were found in the same creek recently. 5 more bodies, okay? So, and these are bodies that have been found recently now. Think about that. Now, Brian, you think Brian's really out there killing all these people? People don't think about things, but we're going to continue to watch this, and you determine. I mean, they're not going to tell you much. You pretty much heard what they said, And another thing, when they say articles were found, it doesn't mean clothing articles. It doesn't mean a book bag was found. It can mean they already said notebook, but the notebook is not considered an article that was found. An article can also mean when you have forensics and everybody on scene, and the commanding, the commanding officers are on scene. That means that human remains were found. Okay, because an article can be a human remain. Look it up. Look it up in Wikipedia or Wiki. They tell you everything. There's a dictionary online, and it will explain it to you.
As 2 items side by side. I saw it as backpack and notebook.
No, that could very well
could be the notebooks in the backpack. But that makes your point even more.
I just messaged this guy over here to the right. This one right here. You're looking at that's talking with JB. And I asked him a question. I said, what if that was your son, okay? And everybody in the world was pointing their finger, but then you find his remains in the woods, okay? When he already told everybody he was going to commit suicide with that Bible scripture that he wrote, okay? He didn't write the scripture, but he copied the scripture, which everybody called demonic. And again, he said all his artwork, his music was demonic. Okay, so they both listened to the same music, by the way. So I guess they were both demonic is what he's saying. But in the other way of layman terms, he's the one that's probably demonic, because if he carries the 666 mark on his body, that the officer that was driving Brian back to the hotel, or driving to the hotel, to Bowen Hotel, okay, this is after the whole incident, that officer on his left hand, okay, has 3 dots. But those 3 dots, when you look at them, they're really, and I'm not going to say I didn't, I knew what they were already, but Jennifer discovered the 3 dots by finding a tattoo that looks exactly like it. And what it is it's the number 6 backwards, okay? 666. But it also reads 666 in many other ways, meaning that it's a triangle that is just not there. You can't see the triangle, but you got to count the 3 points. Then you got to count the 3 dots. And then you got to count, they're like little hairs that stand off the dots, those 3 as well. Those are the line that makes up the 6, the dot and the line, okay? So when you add 3 times 3 times 3, in the biblical Bible numerology, it's 666 is the number, okay? So it's spelled out in many ways. And remember, 6 times 6, 12. Or 6 plus 6 is 12. So 12 is a a number as well. But when numbers are by themselves, like a 3, 6, no matter how you put it, is a bad number. It's written in the Bible. That's the evil number. Period. Doesn't matter. So when you have like 3 by itself, the number 3 is mentioned in the Bible so many times. Remember, 3 days Christ rose from the dead. Okay, remember that 3 days, everything's 3. Okay, but when you add 3s and triplets, 333, that's when it becomes the satanic temple number. And by the way, Utah is filled with satanic people. Okay, they have a satanic church there. ABC 4. Okay, I'll post the article later. I posted it a million times. ABC 4 find the satanic people some of the nicest people in the world. Now remember, satanic people, what do you think they do? They believe in abusing children. They believe in sexual abuse. They believe in trafficking. They have to sacrifice in order to satisfy their master. And nobody sees this stuff. But you know what? It all leads to one thing. You really think that this case is so big that they would make this big? No. It's not that it's this big over just 4 murders. Remember this. This has to do with a lot more than what you all know about. Okay? And remember, Utah is like almost the capital of child trafficking. Maybe you really need go and dig really deep. Dig until you find something.
Right.
Into that bag. But and yes, they're silicone based and they're great at keeping water out. That's what they're designed to do. But that's different to me than a backpack. And so we don't know.
And then what else is in the bag? I mean, it's interesting to me again. Why the release of just those 2 items, backpack and notebook. It's very interesting that they released what's there and not the rest of the items in the backpack.
More comments on what is justice for Gabby Petito. To you, wherever you're watching from, what does justice mean to you? Stephanie Hahn, #AJB Justice, is giving answers by admitting what you did and that it is wrong. But to Stephanie's, I'm going to hop off of Stephanie's comment here and say that a deceased person can't admit a fault unless it's in the notebook.
Right.
And he can't admit that it was wrong unless it's in the notebook. But okay, I'll jump off of Stephanie's comment here. Let's say it's Brian Laundrie. Let's say that Brian Laundrie committed murder and murdered his fiancee, Gabby Petito. And let's say that there is legible content within the notebook. And that legible content reads as something along the lines of, I did it. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Is that...
Has anybody ever noticed one thing? You never heard the media or anybody bring up the cops. They seem to just ignore the entire fact of the police. Do you know why? Let me explain this to you. I'm studying federal investigations now since I got into this case because I was offered a job. So, and not being a cop or anything, but translating artwork into English. Okay, because somebody saw something and somebody commented something on YouTube and it happened to be a doctor, and he had an in somewhere, so he hey, look, I'm going to take the job because if it's to help somebody, yeah, that's fine, I'll do that. Of course, I got to be paid for my time on that, but that's a different story. But as far as this case goes, you never see them once bring up the cops, and there's a reason for that. Because you see, the media is going to tell you what you want to hear, because you have to understand the media is probably also involved with the case, and they're told not to say certain things. But there are people out there like me that are going to say things, and it's not that we don't care. It's that I don't want to sit there watching, just bullshit all day long, and that's all you see on Facebook. And now all of a sudden the case has risen up to the top because, somebody went out there, the Daily Mail went out and said, oh, their headline states, oh, Brian Laundrie's parents went to the reserve and they found remains and they found this and that, but they're lying because that's not the truth. This is live. This is coming right from there. Okay. They have reporters on the ground that are people that are talking to Brian Laundrie's attorney right now, okay? And he said articles. He didn't say clothing. He didn't say anything else, but they did mention remains, all right? They mentioned the book that was found. But the Daily Mail, they seem to just like steer people in the wrong direction. Stating, well, they found this, they found a leg, they found an arm. The next thing you know, ABC's saying they found an eyeball. And then you got one of the trolls on Facebook saying, oh, they found his toenail. The next thing you got the dog out there saying, he saw Brian in SpaceX on the moon. It's like it keeps on going, and it comes funny after a while. Because they're making it so big for a reason. Because you got to understand, until they apprehend everybody, and trust me, when the coroner came out and said, he didn't say the word suspect. He said, and he didn't comment on Brian being a suspect. He said Brian's a person of an interest. He did not say suspect. He said suspects. So when you add an S to the end of suspect, it makes a big difference than one person that did something. And then you also have to consider this. They found the two girls, Kylan and Crystal, their keychain close to Blue Point, Long Island. So can you explain to me how the hell those two girls' keychain got to Blueport, Long Island, 10 minutes from where Gabby's dad lives, the stepdad? How can that be possible? What, Brian's hanging out in Blueport, Long Island too now? Like he's going to go somewhere people want to kill him? Really? So how I look at it is the only person in Gabby's family that went on the search was Jim Schmidt. He's the only one that was in Wyoming. So let's think about this again. How did that keychain get from Wyoming to Blueport, Long Island? How did it get there? Now think about that, because I'm not going to say it. Everybody should be able to figure that out, because that right there is basic common sense. Do you really think that Brian went to Blueport? You think Gabby's dad is hiding him? I don't think so. Okay? So you need to think about that. But I'm not going to tell you that one.
That justice is admission justice. Is him saying, I did a terrible thing, I was wrong, and I can't live with the knowledge that I claimed the life of somebody who I loved. Is it?
Okay, but I think if he really did that before he would kill himself, number one, wouldn't he make a phone call to somebody and say, look, I did it and I'm going to kill myself and that's it? I don't think he's going to kill himself, over. I think he witnessed something and, again, autistic burnout, everybody took it in a direction that it shouldn't have gone. Autistic burnout is the meaning of somebody that is exhausted. They lost all their resources, okay? There's nobody else they can talk to make them believe, what the truth is. And he tried to put his artwork out there by explaining the truth, but nobody believed him. And when you have people in front of your parents' house sitting there saying they want to kill you, they're going over there with drones and watching everything you're doing. You come out to mow your lawn and they're in your face. Okay, the thing that people don't think about is that's called interfering with a federal investigation. When the feds tell you to stay away from somebody's home, that's their property. And another thing, if you had put something on my lawn and stuck it there, I have every right to pull that off of my property and throw that in the trash. Who has the right, to go and charge me with pulling something off of the property that I own? Does that make sense? How would you like if somebody came to your house, okay, and pulled your mailbox off your property and took it and threw it in the trash, okay? It's the same thing. Or how would you like if somebody put something on your lawn that you didn't want there, okay? Maybe somebody come and put up a naked man on your lawn or something, all right? Think about that. You got kids. But you go and take that poster off your lawn and throw it in the trash. The next thing you know, you're going through a quarter period because you removed something from your lawn. Does that make sense to you? Doesn't the law seem kind of backwards or something there? I mean, think about these things. It looks like bad turned into good, and good is bad now. Now people could go out in New York City, they could slice somebody up, they go to jail, they get booked, and the next day they're released because there's no bail anymore. So they release the criminals on the street, but then you take the peaceful protesters and you lock them in jail? That doesn't make sense, and people need to wake up and start seeing things because it's getting bad out there and nobody's paying attention. Nobody really cares. They don't look at the weather no more. They don't care about nothing until it hits, and then you care about everything. Well, Facebook, you
I also
can go
tell
watch this live.
clients that we sell more diamonds.
You can go and watch this live yourselves and check it out. It's on the news. I'm not going to sit here all day when you can go and watch the same thing. I believe it's let me see. Let me get it for you now. Let's see. All right. Well, you know, it's Channel 8. It's live in Florida. You can look it up live at the reserve and go watch it. You know, I'm not going to sit here watching this all day. What is it called?
WFLA.
It's WFL8 Florida live. So you can get it on YouTube. All right, guys. Have a great day. All right, so you guys heard it, and you know, basically we were running live everywhere, and at various different places and platforms, and I'm building the network up, and later on we'll come live with describing the tattoo, the 666 tattoo, and I'll put it in definition for you, explaining and showing you what it means and how they do things backwards, so that you know most people can understand it. You know, but it all leads into the Monster Energy drink. You know, the dog found that. You know, people aren't really looking into the things as they all connect. So once you start connecting each dot, you're gonna understand more of what's going on. But it's like people really want to be out there believing that Brian did this, and you know they're not going to be satisfied until you know they hear that he didn't do it, because it's going to even satisfy them more, because now they're going to make up lies and they're going to say, oh, this case was fixed, and you know, oh, they lied to us, and they're going to find the reason where they cannot or don't have to say that they're wrong. You know, what people need to learn how to do out there is you have to take, you know, responsibility for your own actions and consequences for the things that you say. You know, and they got to think about putting yourself in that predicament or putting your family in that predicament. How would you feel if people were in front of your lawn every day? And how would you feel if somebody was pointing the finger at your son or your daughter or whatever the case is? You're not going to like it. So you have to put yourself in their shoes, whether he's guilty or innocent. I mean, there is a point where it all matters, but you cannot point your finger when you don't have no evidence. You're not there. You're not searching for them. You know, all you're doing is sitting home and making suggestions, but they're not even suggestions. You're pointing the finger. There are people literally out there pointing their fingers just right at Brian, whether he's dead or alive. But nobody ever gave it thought. You know, what about the cops that started all this? Okay, where you got to go back to where it started. You can't start in the middle of something. You can't start in the end of something. You need to go back before it started. You need to go back and do the research before this started. You have to research their lives to see what kind of people they were. What did they eat? What did they not eat? Where did they like to go? What were their dislikes? What were their likes? What kind of artwork did they like? You know, you have to look up every single thing. You can't just sit there and judge a person and say because he's bald and he's this and he's that, you know, that he's a murderer. You can't say that because you have no right to say that. Nobody does. And when you hear the feds not saying that and you hear authorities not saying that, what gives you the right to say that? And who are you? Are you an official? Do you hold that license where you can point your finger and accuse anybody you want to accuse? But when it comes time to you, if that was you in those shoes, how would you feel? Put yourself in those shoes. If you were Brian, what would you feel? And what if you were, you know, you had nobody to tell the truth to, and all you can do is write it down in your artwork, explaining it in ways where maybe the people that did this can't understand, but maybe there are artists out there like us that can understand and explain it to people. But people don't look at it in that way because all they want to do is sit back, you know, and point their finger, because that's all they're good at doing is pointing their fingers. You know, you have to think, if you really believed in God, you wouldn't point your finger. You wouldn't accuse anybody of anything because God never accused anybody of nothing. Okay? He gave you a choice. You can either go that way or you can follow me. That's it. You know, yeah, people are forgiven for their sins. They are forgiven for, even if they murdered babies, they're forgiven. But once they take that forgiveness and they ask for it, and God grants you that forgiveness, if you mess up again, you're going to hell. It doesn't matter. Can't you see what's going on in the world? This is a spiritual war. It's a holy war. Do you understand the matters of a holy war and what spiritualness means? Look it up, do the research, and we'll be back to you live again this evening. We're going to do another live report, and that's going to be based on the food shortages. Okay? And you'll listen to our evening report, and then we'll be followed by a nice, I'm going to play some piano and stuff for people later, and we'll do a little more with the fashion on another show. For now, have a blessed afternoon.